In a hearing over toxic workplace culture within the Washington Commanders facility.
Why do you ban Dave Portnoy from NFL games?
Pardon me, I couldn't hear your question.
Why do you ban Dave Portnoy from NFL games? He's a journalist. In fact, he's a sports journalist. Why is he banned?
Republicans did their usual dog and pony show. Here, Rep. Jim Jordan threw the word fact, with the founder of Barstool Sports being a sports journalist, which is indeed not fact. But then we learn why Jordan did this.
I mean, he interviewed the President of the United States, interviewed President Trump in the White House. It seems to me if you can get into the White House, you should be able to get into a football game, particularly as a member of the press and a member of the sports press.
Fairly obvious why Jordan virtue signals here to gain positive affirmation from Portnoy's company. However, I do agree members of the press should be allowed in. So why did the Trump administration block the BBC, CNN, New York Times, LA Times, and Politico from a press briefing? If Jordan is going to spew this, at least be consistent.
Do you agree with the Washington Redskins' decision to fine Jack Del Rio $100,000?
On top of not asking about Snyder, Jordan then intentionally uses the wrong name for Washington's football team. Del Rio, mind you.
And then we have a dust-up at the Capitol. Well, there's nothing burned down. And we're not going to talk about, we're going to make that a major deal.
Called what occurred at the Capitol on January 6th a dust-up. Jordan knows exactly what he's doing. And many Republicans followed suit with the charade.
It started shortly after President Biden's inauguration in 2021.
This administration is doing all it can to annihilate America.
A completely unsecured border, a fentanyl crisis.
What is the only thing they did not ask about? That would be Washington Commanders owner Dan Snyder. The House Oversight Committee invited Snyder yet again, but he didn't show.
Apparently, Mr. Snyder is in France, where he has docked his luxury yacht near a resort town. That should tell you just how much respect he has for women in the workplace.
With Snyder absent, NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell fielded questions for 2.5 hours about his understanding of allegations of widespread sexual harassment in the team workplace under Snyder, as well as the league's response to them. Asked to characterize what he had learned about the Commanders' environment, Goodell, testifying remotely from New York, affirmed he had not seen a culture anywhere near as bad as Washington's during his 4 decades in the NFL, but Goodell stood firm in his refusal to release the findings of a league-sponsored investigation of the Commanders conducted by attorney Beth Wilkinson, reiterating that the NFL had promised confidentiality to the 150 former employees who described episodes of sexual harassment and degrading treatment. The latest revelations regarding Snyder are deeply troubling. An employee of Washington's NFL team accused owner Daniel Snyder of sexually harassing and assaulting her in April 2009, 3 months before the team agreed to pay the woman $1.6 million as part of a confidential settlement, according to legal correspondence obtained by the Post. Details of the 2009 settlement emerge as the NFL investigates a separate accusation of sexual harassment against Snyder, and as members of Congress press the team and the NFL for information about the league's year-long investigation of sexual harassment at the franchise, which concluded in 2021 with no public report or investigative findings. One of the more troubling findings was via the Washington Post. In 2009, then General Counsel David Donovan investigated an allegation. The problem was David Donovan reported his findings to Dan Snyder. Donovan claimed the woman fabricated her story, cited the plane's tight configuration and quiet engine, as well as interviews with passengers who said they didn't notice signs of an assault or distress. Furthermore, Donovan accused the alleged victim of lying, including that she wore revealing clothing and flirted with other men on the trip to Vegas. Recall Beth Wilkinson, the attorney who looked into the workplace culture within the Washington Commanders facilities. Now, she wanted to interview that 2009 accuser. That's when Dan Snyder and his team got in her way. At the time, even with Snyder publicly saying he would cooperate with all aspects of the investigation, the owner's attorneys tried to prevent Wilkinson from speaking with the accuser. According to a letter the woman's attorney wrote to Snyder's lawyers that was filed in federal court. To this day, Roger Goodell refuses to release Wilkinson's report for reasons the House Oversight Committee, mainly Democrats, want answers to. Thus, they launched their own inquiry. In this hearing, David Pauken, who worked with Snyder from 2001 to 2006, as COO, testified in a committee deposition that when Snyder learned that a member of the team's coaching staff had groped a public relations employee, he refused to take action against the coach and instead directed that the employee who had been groped stay away from the coach. Then there was Brian LaFemina, president and COO of Business Ops, who spoke with the committee and told them of this in 2018. He described how he got in touch with Snyder to tell him a subordinate felt uncomfortable being around Larry Michael, a former longtime broadcaster for the team. When LaFemina told Snyder of the allegations against Michael, including sexual harassment, Snyder balked back that Larry was a sweetheart and that Larry wouldn't hurt anybody. Per the House Committee's deposition, the findings are serious. The allegations are that during Beth Wilkinson's investigation, Dan Snyder allegedly used witness intimidation tactics. Mr. Snyder tried to buy the silence of his accusers and intimidate them by sending private investigators to their homes. During a transcribed interview of Jason Friedman, a former sales executive who served under Snyder for more than 2 decades, explained that Mr. Snyder displayed a pattern of intimidating behavior and attempted to silence employees who raised allegations of misconduct. Mr. Friedman described the team's efforts under Mr. Snyder as follows: obey first. If you don't obey, intimidate. If you still don't obey, terminate. And then if you didn't go away and you tried to sue the team for wrongful termination, it would be to fight back. If that didn't work, buy off. And yet, what remains is the fact that the league still needs 24 of the 31 owners to force Snyder to sell the team, which does not appear likely. Snyder has now been subpoenaed, and once again, the ball is in his court.